Some things can't be forgiven, but they can be survived.
The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered against the concrete floor of my garage. Above me, the undercarriage of a 1970 Mustang Fastback dripped oil like tears from a broken marriage, which, as it turned out, was exactly what I was looking at. Friday at 7? Perfect. Sarah's voice drifted through the thin walls separating my workshop from our kitchen. Her tone had that particular brightness she reserved for people who weren't me. I can't wait to catch up properly. I wiped my hands on an already filthy rag and rolled out from under the car. Through the doorway, I could see my wife of 18 years pacing our kitchen in her power suit, phone pressed to her ear, like she was negotiating $1 million deal, which, knowing Sarah, she probably thought she was. "Who was that?" I asked when she finally hung up, trying to keep my voice casual. After 2 decades of marriage, you learn to read the warning signs. Sarah's smile was definitely DEFCON 1. "My ex-husband, Tom," she said, smoothing down her already perfect blonde hair. "We're having dinner Friday to discuss some business opportunities." The wrench I'd been holding hit the floor again. "Cancel it." Sarah's perfectly manicured eyebrows shot up like I'd just suggested she burn down her precious marketing firm. "Excuse me? You heard me. Cancel it. I'm not comfortable with my wife having dinner with her ex-husband." She laughed, and it sounded like breaking glass. "Impossible to cancel, Jake. This is business. Important business that you wouldn't understand." Impossible to cancel. Those words hit me like a sledgehammer to the gut. In my line of work, nothing was impossible to cancel. Every bolt could be loosened, every engine could be torn apart. Every carefully constructed machine could be reduced to scrap metal if you knew where to apply the right pressure. "Try me," I said, stepping closer. "What kind of business?" Sarah's expression shifted into that patronizing look she'd perfected over the years. The one that said I was just a grease monkey who couldn't possibly comprehend the sophisticated world of corporate marketing. "Tom's company is looking for a new marketing director. The position would be perfect for me, and the salary." She paused dramatically. "Well, let's just say it would be enough to finally get us out of this dump." I looked around our kitchen, with its worn but clean counters and the coffee maker I'd fixed 3 times because Sarah refused to buy a new one. This dump had been our home for 15 years, the place where we'd raised our daughter Emily, where we'd hosted birthday parties and holiday dinners, where we'd made love on the kitchen table during better times. "What's wrong with where we are?" I asked. "Everything, Jake. Everything is wrong with where we are." The next morning, I was under the hood of a 1970 Chevelle when my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Working late tonight? Don't wait up." Working late, right. I'd heard that excuse more times than I'd changed spark plugs, which was saying something, but this time felt different. This time, the lie came with a name attached, Tom. I'd met Tom exactly once, at Emily's high school graduation 2 months ago. He was the kind of man who wore $1,000 suits to outdoor ceremonies and somehow never sweated. The kind of man who shook hands like he was closing a deal and looked at my calloused fingers like they might be contagious. "So you're the mechanic," he'd said, managing to make my profession sound like a communicable disease. "Auto restoration specialist," I'd corrected, but he'd already turned away to air-kiss Sarah's cheek. Now, apparently, he was her ticket to a better life. A life that didn't include grease-stained work shirts or the smell of motor oil. A life that didn't include me. By Thursday, I'd made my decision. If Sarah wanted to play games, I'd play along. But I'd be playing by my rules. I closed the shop early and drove to Radio Shack, where a pimply-faced kid sold me a GPS tracker small enough to fit in my palm. "For keeping track of my tools," I told him, which wasn't technically a lie. Sarah had become a tool, just not the kind I usually worked with. That evening, while Sarah was in the shower preparing for what she called just dinner with an old friend, I slipped into the garage and attached the tracker to the undercarriage of her BMW. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd bought her that car for our 15th anniversary, back when I still believed in impossible things like forever. Friday night arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train. Sarah emerged from our bedroom looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover, wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, and perfume that definitely wasn't from the pill store. "Don't wait up," she said, kissing my cheek with lips that tasted like lies. "Wouldn't dream of it," I replied, already pulling up the GPS app on my phone. The tracker showed her heading downtown, past the business district, past the restaurants where we used to celebrate anniversaries, straight to the Marriott Hotel on 5th Street. She parked in the garage and stayed there for exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. Business meeting, my A. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my workshop, staring at the GPS data and wondering when exactly my marriage had become a demolition project. The tracker showed Sarah's car leaving the hotel at 11:47 p.m., then stopping for 20 minutes at a 24-hour pharmacy before finally coming home. The pharmacy stop bothered me more than the hotel. What did you buy at midnight after cheating on your husband? Plan B? Protection for next time? Or just mints to wash away the taste of betrayal? Saturday morning, Sarah was all sunshine and coffee, humming while she made breakfast like she hadn't just blown up our marriage the night before. "How was your business dinner?" I asked, watching her face carefully. "Productive," she said without missing a beat. "Very productive. Tom thinks I'd be perfect for the position." I bet he does, I thought, but kept my mouth shut. In my line of work, you learn patience. You didn't force a stubborn bolt. You applied steady pressure until it gave way. "When do you start?" I asked. Sarah's smile flickered for just a second. "Well, there are still some details to work out. More meetings to schedule." More meetings, more hotels, more lies wrapped up in business terminology. That afternoon, while Sarah was at her yoga class, or wherever she actually went on Saturday afternoons now, I did something I'd never done in 18 years of marriage. I went through her phone. Sarah had always been careless with technology. She used the same password for everything. Emily 2005, our daughter's birth year. It took me less than 30 seconds to crack her phone and less than 30 more to find what I was looking for. The text thread with Tom read like a bad romance novel. "Tom, can't stop thinking about last night." Sarah, "Me neither." "When can we do it again?" Tom, "Soon, Jennifer's out of town next weekend." Sarah, "Perfect. Same hotel?" Tom, "Always. Room 412 is becoming our place." Our place. Two words that hit me like a punch to the solar plexus. They had a place. A room where they met regularly, where they'd built their own little world of secrets and lies. I scrolled further back, finding weeks of messages that painted a clear picture. This wasn't some sudden attraction or moment of weakness. This was a calculated affair that had been going on for at least 2 months, maybe longer. But it was the next message thread that really made my blood boil. Sarah had been texting her best friend Melissa about the affair. Sarah, "Jake's getting suspicious." Melissa, "Just stick to the business story. Men are too stupid to figure it out." Sarah, "You're right, he bought it completely. God, I can't wait to be done with this life." Melissa, "Soon, honey. Soon you'll have everything you deserve." Everything she deserved. Apparently, 18 years of marriage, a daughter who adored her, and a husband who'd worked myself to the bone to give her a comfortable life wasn't enough. She deserved more. She deserved Tom. I took screenshots of everything, then put her phone back exactly where I'd found it. Evidence was important in my line of work. You needed proof before you started tearing things apart. Sunday dinner was a family tradition in our house, even though Emily was 17 and would rather be anywhere else. We sat around our kitchen table, Sarah chatting about her week like she was auditioning for Mother of the Year, Emily scrolling through her phone, and me plotting revenge like a man possessed. "How's the shop, Dad?" Emily asked, actually looking up from her screen. "Busy," I said, working on a real restoration project, something that looks perfect on the outside but is completely rotten underneath. Sarah's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "That sounds expensive to fix." "Not really," I said, meeting her eyes across the table. "Sometimes the best solution is to strip it down to the frame and start over. Get rid of all the broken parts." Emily looked between us with the sharp instincts of a teenager who'd grown up in an increasingly tense household. "Are you guys talking about cars or something else?" "Just cars, sweetheart," Sarah said quickly. "Your father loves his metaphors." But I could see the worry in her eyes. Good. Let her worry. Let her wonder how much I knew and what I planned to do about it. That night after Sarah fell asleep, I sat in my workshop and made a list. Not a grocery list or a to-do list, but a revenge list. Every person who'd played a part in destroying my marriage was going to pay, starting with Tom and ending with my lying wife. But first, I needed more information. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with before I started swinging my wrenches. Monday morning, I called my sister Linda. If you wanted to know anything about anyone in our town, Linda was your woman. She sold real estate, which meant she knew everyone's business, their finances, and their dirty secrets. "Jake," she said when she answered. "What's up, little brother?" I need to know about Tom Richardson, I said without preamble. Sarah's ex-husband. Linda was quiet for a moment. Why are you asking about him? Just curious. Sarah mentioned he might have a job opportunity for her. Oh, honey, Linda said, and her tone told me everything I needed to know. You need to sit down for this conversation. Linda's real estate office smelled like vanilla candles and broken dreams. She'd decorated it to look successful. Leather chairs, fake plants, motivational posters about reaching for the stars. But I could see the stack of unpaid bills on her desk and the worry lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. Tom Richardson, she said, pulling out a file folder thick enough to choke a horse. Where do I even start? Start with the truth, I said, settling into one of those leather chairs. All of it. Linda opened the folder and spread out papers like she was dealing cards. Bank statements, credit reports, divorce filings, and what looked like police reports. Tom's been married to Jennifer Walsh for 8 years, she began. You know Jennifer, she runs Walsh Marketing, the firm that's been stealing all the big accounts from the smaller agencies in town. I knew Jennifer by reputation. She was the kind of woman who wore power suits like armor and could crush a man's ego with a single glance. The exact opposite of Sarah, who preferred to destroy people with a smile. Here's where it gets interesting, Linda continued, pointing to a divorce filing. Tom's first marriage to Sarah ended because he was cheating, with Jennifer, as it turns out. So Jennifer knew exactly what kind of man she was marrying. And now he's cheating on Jennifer with Sarah, I said, full circle. It gets better, Linda said, pulling out what looked like a financial statement. Tom's company is hemorrhaging money, has been for 2 years. He owes everyone in town, including me. He defaulted on a commercial lease last year. I studied the papers, my mechanic's brain automatically organizing the information into logical patterns. So he's broke. Worse than broke. He's leveraged to the eyeballs and 1 bad quarter away from bankruptcy. Linda leaned back in her chair. Jake, there's no job. There never was a job. Whatever Tom's telling Sarah, it's not about employment opportunity. The pieces started falling into place like parts in an engine rebuild. Tom wasn't offering Sarah a job. He was using her. But for what? What about Jennifer? I asked. Does she know about the affair? Linda's smile turned predatory. Not yet, but Jennifer Walsh doesn't strike me as the type of woman who'd take kindly to being made a fool of twice. I gathered up the papers and handed them back to Linda. I need you to do me a favor. Name it. I need you to arrange a meeting with Jennifer Walsh. Tell her I have information about her husband that she needs to hear. Linda raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to go down this road, Jake? Once you open this can of worms, there's no putting them back. The can's already open, I said, standing up. I'm just deciding who gets eaten by the worms. That evening, Sarah announced she had another business meeting with Tom on Wednesday. She delivered this news while folding laundry, as casual as if she were discussing the weather. Another meeting so soon? I asked, not looking up from the engine manual I was reading. These things take time to develop properly, she said. You can't rush good business relationships. The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a wrench. Sarah was right about one thing. You couldn't rush good relationships. Too bad she'd forgotten that principle when it came to our marriage. Wednesday arrived like a hangover, inevitable and painful. Sarah spent an hour getting ready, trying on 3 different outfits before settling on a blue dress that hugged her curves in ways that had nothing to do with business. Don't wait up, she said, the same lie she'd been telling for weeks. Wouldn't dream of it, I replied, the same lie I'd been telling in return. This time I was ready. I'd borrowed a camera with a telephoto lens from my buddy Ray at the boxing gym, and I'd already scouted the hotel layout. The Marriott had floor-to-ceiling windows in their restaurant, and a room 412 was on the 4th floor with a clear view from the parking garage across the street. I got to the hotel 30 minutes before Sarah's car appeared on my GPS tracker. She parked in her usual spot and walked into the lobby like she owned the place. 15 minutes later, Tom's silver Mercedes pulled up to the valet stand. From my position in the parking garage, I had a perfect view of the hotel restaurant. Sarah and Tom sat at a corner table, and their body language told a story that had nothing to do with employment negotiations. She leaned in when he talked, touched his hand across the table, and laughed at everything he said like he was the funniest man alive. After an hour of what was obviously foreplay disguised as dinner, they left the restaurant together. The elevator took them up, and 20 minutes later, the lights came on in room 412. I took pictures of everything. The dinner, the hand-holding, Tom's car, the hotel receipt I found in the parking lot with his name on it. Evidence for the case I was building. But the real evidence came when I checked Sarah's phone the next morning. She'd been sloppy again, leaving it on the kitchen counter while she showered. The text from Tom was waiting for me like a gift. Last night was incredible. Jennifer leaves for Chicago on Friday. We'll have the whole weekend. The whole weekend. While I worked in my shop, trying to keep my small business afloat, my wife was planning a romantic getaway with her ex-husband. But Tom had made a mistake. He'd given me something I could use, Jennifer's travel schedule. I picked up my phone and dialed the number Linda had given me. Walsh Marketing, Jennifer Walsh speaking. Mrs. Walsh, my name is Jake Morrison. I believe we need to talk. Jennifer Walsh's office was everything Sarah's future office probably wasn't going to be. Corner suite, floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city, and furniture that cost more than most people's cars. Jennifer herself was exactly what I'd expected. Sharp as a razor blade, and twice as dangerous. Mr. Morrison, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her massive desk. Linda mentioned you have information about my husband. I do, I said, pulling out the folder I'd prepared. But first, I need to know, are you aware that Tom has been having regular dinner meetings with his ex-wife? Jennifer's expression didn't change, but I caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Tom mentioned he was exploring some business opportunities with Sarah. Business opportunities? I repeated, sliding the first photograph across her desk. Is this what business looks like in your industry? The photo showed Tom and Sarah at their corner table, her hand on his, both of them leaning in like teenagers on a first date. Jennifer studied it for a long moment, her face revealing nothing. This was taken Wednesday night, I continued, sliding over more photos. At the Marriott downtown. Room 412, to be specific. Now Jennifer's mask slipped, just for a second, but long enough for me to see the fury underneath. How long has this been going on? She asked, her voice deadly quiet. At least 2 months that I can prove, I said, pulling out printouts of the text messages. Probably longer. Jennifer read through the messages, her jaw getting tighter with each exchange. When she finished, she looked up at me with eyes like ice. What do you want? She asked. The same thing you do, as I said. Justice. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, studying me like I was a business proposal she was considering. What did you have in mind? Tom's been lying to Sarah about having a job for her. According to my research, his company is nearly bankrupt. He's using her for something, and I want to know what. And when we find out, then we make sure both of them get exactly what they deserve. Jennifer smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen on a human face. Mr. Morrison, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful partnership. We spent the next hour planning. Jennifer had resources I couldn't dream of. Private investigators, forensic accountants, and connections throughout the business community. I had something she didn't. Access to Sarah's phone and computer. There's something else, Jennifer said as I was getting ready to leave. Tom's been stealing from our joint accounts. Small amounts, but consistent. I've been tracking it for weeks. How much? About $15,000 so far. Money he claims he's been spending on business development. Business development. Also known as hotel rooms and expensive dinners with his ex-wife. Can you prove it? Jennifer's smile turned predatory. Mr. Morrison, I don't just run a marketing company. I also have a law degree and a very good relationship with the district attorney's office. That evening, I sat in my workshop and tried to process everything I'd learned. Tom wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was stealing from her to finance his affair with my wife. Sarah wasn't just destroying our marriage. She was helping Tom destroy his finances and his second marriage. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. This wasn't just about love, or even love. This was about two selfish people destroying everything and everyone around them to get what they wanted. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Working late again tonight. Project deadline. Project deadline. Right. The only project Sarah was working on was perfecting her lies. I was about to put the phone down when it buzzed again. This time it was Emily, texting from upstairs. Dad, can we talk? I found my daughter in her room, sitting on her bed with her laptop open, and in an expression that reminded me way too much of her mother when she was planning something. What's up, kiddo? Emily closed the laptop and looked at me with eyes that were far too old for 17. Dad, I know about Mom. My heart stopped. What do you mean? I mean, I know she's cheating on you. I've known for weeks. I sat down heavily on the edge of her bed. Emily, don't, she said, holding up a hand. Don't lie to me like she's been lying to you. I saw the hotel charges on the credit card statement. I heard her phone calls. I'm not stupid, Dad. Why didn't you say anything? Emily's eyes filled with tears. Because I kept hoping I was wrong. I kept hoping she'd come to her senses and stop. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. But she's not going to stop, is she? No, I said quietly. I don't think she is. So what are you going to do about it? I looked at my daughter, my smart, beautiful, angry daughter who deserved better than parents who'd turned their marriage into a war zone. I'm going to fix it, I said. How? The same way I fix everything else. I'm going to take it apart and rebuild it the right way. Emily nodded like this made perfect sense. Can I help? Absolutely not. This is adult business, and I won't have you getting caught in the crossfire. Too late, Dad. I'm already in the crossfire. We all are. Emily opened her laptop again. Besides, I might have information you can use. What kind of information? Emily turned the screen toward me. It showed Sarah's Facebook page, but not the version I was familiar with. This was some kind of hidden profile, with posts and photos I'd never seen. Mom has a secret Facebook account, Emily explained. She uses it to communicate with her old college friends and post things she doesn't want us to see. I scrolled through the posts, my anger building with each one. Photos of expensive dinners I hadn't paid for, complaints about her boring life. And worst of all, posts about Tom that went back months. She's been planning this for a long time, hasn't she? Emily asked. Yeah, I said, closing the laptop. She has. But as I looked at my daughter's determined expression, I realized something important. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting for Emily's respect, for the principle that actions have consequences, and for the simple idea that you can't destroy people's lives without paying a price. Sarah wanted a new life? Fine. I was going to give her exactly what she deserved. Friday morning brought rain and the kind of gray sky that matched my mood perfectly. Sarah was practically vibrating with excitement as she got ready for work, humming some song I didn't recognize and checking her phone every 30 seconds. Big weekend planned? I asked, watching her pack an overnight bag. Just a girls' weekend with Melissa, she said without looking at me. We're driving up to the spa resort in Millfield. I told you about this weeks ago. Another lie delivered with the casual ease of someone who'd had plenty of practice. Sarah had never mentioned any spa weekend, and I was willing to bet money that Melissa had no idea she was supposed to be Sarah's alibi. That's nice, I said. You deserve some relaxation. Sarah finally looked at me, probably trying to figure out if there was sarcasm in my voice. There was, but I'd learned to hide it well over the years. I'll be back Sunday evening, she said, kissing my cheek like the loving wife she was pretending to be. Take your time, I said. Take all the time you need. After Sarah left, I called Jennifer Walsh. It's happening, I said when she answered. This weekend, Tom thinks you're in Chicago, and Sarah thinks she's going to a spa. Perfect, Jennifer said. Are you ready for phase 2? Phase 2 was Jennifer's idea, and it was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of confronting them directly, we were going to let them dig their own graves deeper before we buried them in the consequences. I'm ready, I said. But are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. Mr. Morrison, Jennifer said, and I could hear the steel in her voice. I stopped believing in going back the moment I saw those photos. Now it's time for both of them to learn that actions have consequences. At noon, I drove to the Marriott and checked into room 414, right next door to Tom and Sarah's love nest. The desk clerk, a kid who looked like he was barely old enough to drink, handed me the key with a bored expression. Enjoy your stay, he said, already looking past me to the next customer. Oh, I planned to. Room 414 was a mirror image of 412, which made my job easier. I'd brought a small digital recorder and a camera with a telephoto lens, both borrowed from Ray at the boxing gym. Ray hadn't asked questions, which was one of the things I appreciated about him. Sometimes a man's got to do what a man's got to do, was all he'd said when I explained that I needed surveillance equipment. At 6:30 p.m., Tom's Mercedes pulled into the hotel parking lot. He was dressed in what I was starting to recognize as his seduction uniform. Expensive suit, too much cologne, and the kind of confident swagger that came from thinking you were smarter than everyone else. Sarah arrived 20 minutes later, and my breath caught in my throat when I saw her. She was wearing a red dress I'd never seen before. Her hair was styled in a way that must have cost a fortune. And she moved with the kind of confidence that came from a woman who thought she was about to get everything she wanted. They met in the lobby, like lovers in a movie, all dramatic embraces and passionate kisses. I took pictures of everything through the restaurant windows, building my evidence file one frame at a time. But the real show started when they got to room 412. The walls in the Marriott were thinner than the hotel probably advertised, and I could hear every word of their conversation through the adjoining wall. At first, it was just the usual romantic nonsense. How much they'd missed each other, how perfect this weekend was going to be, how soon they could be together permanently. Then Tom started talking about money. "I've got the divorce papers ready," he said. "Jennifer's going to be shocked when she gets served on Monday." "What about the business?" Sarah asked. "I thought you said she owned half of everything." Tom laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that made my skin crawl. "That's the beautiful part. I've been moving assets around for months. By the time the divorce is final, there won't be anything for her to claim. And my divorce from Jake? Even easier. He's got nothing worth taking, and with the evidence I've been helping you create, you'll get full custody of Emily plus alimony." Evidence he'd been helping her create. I pressed the recorder closer to the wall, making sure I caught every word. "What kind of evidence?" Sarah asked. "The gambling compulsive habit story is perfect," Tom said. "Especially with the financial records I've been doctoring. It'll look like Jake's been stealing from his business to feed his compulsive habit." My blood turned to ice. They weren't just planning to divorce me. They were planning to frame me for embezzlement and a gambling compulsive habit. They wanted to take Emily away from me and destroy my reputation in the process. "You're sure this will work?" Sarah asked. "Baby, I've done this before. Jennifer never saw it coming, and neither will Jake. By this time next month, we'll be together, you'll have custody of Emily, and both of our ex-spouses will be too busy dealing with their own problems to cause us any trouble." I had heard enough, more than enough. I gathered my equipment and headed for the door, but not before leaving a little surprise of my own. The beauty of being a mechanic was that you learn to work with all kinds of systems, including plumbing. It took me less than 5 minutes to locate the main water line for rooms 412 and 414, and another 5 minutes to create a small, controlled leak that would flood both rooms in about 6 hours. By the time Tom and Sarah woke up on Saturday morning, they'd be sleeping in a swamp. It wasn't much of a revenge, but it was a start. The real revenge was going to come on Monday, when Jennifer Walsh served Tom with divorce papers that included every piece of evidence we'd gathered about his affair, his theft, and his plans to hide assets. And Sarah? Sarah was going to get the surprise of her life when she discovered that her loving husband had been recording her conversations and building a case that would not only prevent her from getting custody of Emily, but would probably result in her losing her job when her employer found out about her involvement in Tom's schemes. But first, I had a phone call to make. "Emily," I said when my daughter answered, "how would you feel about spending the weekend with your Aunt Linda?" "Why?" Emily asked, immediately suspicious. "Because your mother and I are about to have a very adult conversation, and I don't want you anywhere near the fallout." Emily was quiet for a moment. "Dad, are you going to be okay?" "I'm going to be better than okay," I said. "I'm going to be free." Monday morning arrived like Judgment Day, cold, gray, and absolutely unavoidable. I'd spent the weekend preparing for war, and now it was time to load the cannons. Sarah had returned from her spa weekend Sunday evening with the kind of glow that definitely didn't come from cucumber facials and mineral baths. She'd been chatty and affectionate, probably feeling guilty about her weekend of lies, but I'd played along like the devoted husband she thought I was. "How was your weekend?" she'd asked, curling up next to me on the couch like we were still the couple we used to be. "Quiet," I'd said. "Gave me time to think about our future." "Oh, what kind of thoughts?" "Just wondering what changes might be coming our way." Sarah had smiled and squeezed my hand. "Good changes, Jake. Really good changes." She had no idea how right she was. Monday morning, Sarah left for work at her usual time, humming that same song she'd been humming all weekend. She kissed me goodbye and told me she loved me, and for just a moment, I almost felt sorry for what was about to happen to her. Almost. At 9 a.m. sharp, I walked into the offices of Walsh Marketing. The receptionist, a young woman with nervous eyes and too much makeup, looked up at me like I might be there to rob the place. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Jake Morrison to see Jennifer Walsh," I said. "She's expecting me." Jennifer's office was buzzing with activity. She had 3 people in suits sitting around her conference table, and they all looked like the kind of lawyers who charged by the minute. "Gentlemen," Jennifer said when I walked in, "meet Jake Morrison. Jake, these are my attorneys." The lead attorney, a thin man with silver hair and predatory eyes, stood up and shook my hand. "Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Walsh has filled us in on the situation. We're ready to proceed whenever you are." "I'm ready," I said, pulling out the recorder and the stack of photographs I'd compiled over the weekend. "I've got everything we need." For the next hour, we went through the evidence piece by piece. The photos of Tom and Sarah at the hotel, the text messages, the recordings of their conversations, and most importantly, the recording of their plan to frame me for embezzlement and steal custody of Emily. "This is excellent work," the lead attorney said when we finished. "More than enough for both divorce proceedings and potential criminal charges." "Criminal charges?" I asked. "Conspiracy to commit fraud, for starters," Jennifer explained. "Tom's plan to hide assets and frame you for embezzlement crosses several legal lines." "What about Sarah?" "Accessory to fraud, conspiracy, and depending on how deep her involvement goes, potentially embezzlement herself if she's been helping Tom move money around." I felt a grim satisfaction settle in my chest. Sarah wanted a new life? She was about to get one, complete with legal fees, criminal charges, and a reputation that would make her unemployable in our small town. "When do we move?" I asked. "Now," Jennifer said, standing up. "Tom should be in his office, and I believe Sarah is at her current job. We serve them simultaneously, along with restraining orders that prevent them from contacting each other or destroying evidence." "What about Emily?" "Your daughter will be safe," the lead attorney assured me. "Based on the evidence we have, there's no way any judge would grant custody to someone involved in a conspiracy to commit fraud." At 10:30 a.m., I walked into Sarah's office building for what I knew would be the last time. She worked on the third floor of a converted warehouse, the kind of trendy marketing agency that thought exposed brick walls and ping pong tables made up for low salaries and no job security. Sarah's desk was in the middle of an open floor plan, surrounded by 20-something hipsters who spent more time on their phones than actually working. She looked up when she saw me, surprise and worry flickering across her face. Like, "Jake, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said, loud enough for everyone around us to hear, privately. Sarah's boss, a nervous man named Derek, who always looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, appeared at my elbow. "Is everything okay, Sarah?" "Everything's fine," Sarah said quickly, but I could see the panic starting to build in her eyes. "Jake, maybe we should discuss this at home." "No," I said, pulling out my phone and opening the photo gallery. "I think we should discuss it right here, right now." I held up the phone, showing the picture of Sarah and Tom kissing in the hotel lobby. Sarah's face went white, and Derek's eyes went wide. "Jake, please," Sarah whispered, "not here." "Why not here?" I asked, swiping to the next photo. "This is where you work, right? Where you've been telling everyone about your business meetings with your ex-husband?" More people were gathering around us now, drawn by the drama like moths to a flame. Sarah looked around desperately, probably realizing that her carefully constructed professional image was about to crumble. "These are pictures from your business meetings," I continued, swiping through the photos. "Dinner meetings, hotel meetings, weekend meetings, very thorough business discussions." "Jake, stop," Sarah said, reaching for my phone. I pulled it back and opened the audio recording app. "Would you like to hear some of the business you discussed? I have recordings." "Recordings?" Derek asked, looking back and forth between us like he was watching a tennis match. "Oh yes," I said, pressing play. Tom's voice filled the open office space, clear as a bell. "I've been moving assets around for months. By the time the divorce is final, there won't be anything for her to claim." The office had gone completely silent. Everyone was staring at Sarah, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "That's not what it sounds like," she said weakly. I pressed play again, and this time it was Sarah's voice. "What about my divorce from Jake?" Then Tom again. "Even easier. He's got nothing worth taking, and with the evidence I've been helping you create, you'll get full custody of Emily plus alimony." Derek looked like someone had just told him his business was being audited by the IRS. "Sarah, is this true?" Before Sarah could answer, the elevator doors opened, and two men in suits walked onto the floor. Process servers, carrying legal documents and looking for their targets. "Sarah Morrison?" the first one asked. "Yes," Sarah whispered. You're being served with divorce papers and a restraining order, he said, handing her a thick envelope. You're also being served with a subpoena to appear before a grand jury investigating conspiracy to commit fraud. Sarah took the papers with shaking hands, her face cycling through shock, anger, and fear. Around us, her coworkers were pulling out their phones, probably already posting about the drama on social media. Jake, Sarah said, her voice breaking, we can work this out. We can fix this. No, I said, taking back my phone, but we can't. You said it was impossible to cancel, remember? Well, some things are impossible to fix too. I turned to Derek, who was still standing there with his mouth open. You might want to check your employee handbook about workplace conduct and criminal activity. I have a feeling Sarah's going to need some time off to deal with her legal problems. As I walked toward the elevator, I could hear Sarah starting to cry. Part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for her. But the larger part, the part that had been betrayed and lied to and nearly framed for crimes I didn't commit, felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The elevator doors closed on the sound of Sarah's sobs and the excited chatter of her former coworkers. By tomorrow, everyone in town would know what she'd done. By next week, she'd be unemployable. Justice, it turned out, was a beautiful thing. The next few days passed in a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and phone calls. Jennifer Walsh had not been kidding when she said she had resources. By Wednesday, Tom's assets were frozen, his business accounts were under investigation, and he was facing criminal charges that could put him in prison for 5 years. Sarah, meanwhile, had been fired from her job, evicted from our house by court order, and was staying in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. Her legal bills were mounting faster than she could pay them, and her reputation was so thoroughly destroyed that she couldn't even get a job at the local grocery store. Emily had taken the whole thing better than I'd expected. She was angry at her mother, disappointed in both of us for letting our marriage fall apart, but ultimately relieved that the lies and tension were finally over. I'm proud of you, Dad, she said Thursday evening as we sat in our kitchen eating takeout Chinese food. You could have just gotten a quiet divorce and let them get away with it. Sometimes you have to fight back, I said. Sometimes you have to make sure people face consequences for their actions. What's going to happen to Mom? It was a fair question, and one I'd been thinking about a lot. I don't know, I admitted. That depends on the criminal charges and how much she was actually involved in Tom's schemes. Do you think she'll go to prison? Maybe. Probably not for long, but maybe. Emily nodded thoughtfully. Good, she said finally. She deserves whatever happens to her. My daughter's coldness toward her mother worried me a little, but I understood it. Sarah had betrayed all of us, not just me. Emily would have to work through her own feelings about that in her own time. Friday afternoon, I was working in my shop when Jennifer Walsh showed up. She looked tired but satisfied, like someone who'd just won a long, difficult battle. How are you holding up? She asked, leaning against my workbench. Better than I expected, I said honestly. You? The same. Tom moved out yesterday. Took only what his lawyer said he was legally entitled to, which wasn't much. Any word on the criminal charges? Jennifer's smile was sharp as a blade. He's going to plead guilty to fraud and embezzlement. 5 years probation, full restitution, and he can never work in financial services again. And Sarah? Accessory charges. She'll probably get 2 years probation and community service, but her legal career is over. No one's going to hire someone who was involved in a fraud conspiracy. Legal career? I stared at Jennifer in confusion. Sarah doesn't have a legal career. She works in marketing. Jennifer's expression shifted to something like surprise. Jake, Sarah has a law degree. She passed the bar exam 3 years ago, didn't you know? The wrench I'd been holding clattered to the floor. What? She's been working as a paralegal while building up her client base. That's how she met Tom. Through a legal referral network. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly rearranged themselves in my mind. Sarah wasn't just some bored housewife having an affair. She was a lawyer who'd been planning this whole thing from the beginning. The business meetings, the job offer, the plan to frame me for embezzlement. It had all been carefully calculated legal strategy. She played me, I said, more to myself than to Jennifer. She played all of us, Jennifer corrected, but she made one critical mistake. What's that? She underestimated you and me, and the consequences of crossing people who fight back. That evening, I sat in my workshop and tried to process everything I'd learned. My wife of 18 years wasn't just a cheater. She was a lawyer who'd been systematically planning to destroy my life and steal my daughter. The woman I'd trusted with everything had been building a case against me while sleeping in my bed and eating at my table. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that it took my breath away. But as I sat there, surrounded by the tools of my trade, I realized something important. I'd won. Sarah had underestimated the grease monkey, thought she could outsmart the blue-collar guy who didn't understand her sophisticated world. She'd been wrong. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Jake, it's Sarah. Please call me. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. We'd done all the talking we were ever going to do. The rest would be handled by lawyers and judges, and the consequences Sarah had brought on herself. Saturday morning brought the kind of crisp autumn weather that made you believe in new beginnings. I was working on a 1990s Camaro, rebuilding the engine from scratch, when Emily came into the shop. Dad, there's someone here to see you," she said. I looked up to see Ray from the boxing gym standing in my doorway, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "Heard you've been having some excitement," he said, walking over to examine the Camaro's engine. "You could say that. Word around town is that your wife turned out to be some kind of criminal mastermind. Something like that." Ray nodded approvingly. "Always said that woman was too smart for her own good. Too smart and not smart enough, if you know what I mean." I did know what he meant. Sarah had been smart enough to plan an elaborate scheme to destroy my life, but not smart enough to realize that even grease monkeys could fight back when cornered. "What brings you by?" I asked. "Business proposition," Ray said. "You know that classic car auction they hold every year up in Detroit?" "Yeah. Well, I've got a client who's looking for someone to restore a 19 Shelby Cobra. Full restoration, money's no object, and he's willing to pay top dollar for the right mechanic." I looked up from the engine. "How much money are we talking about?" Ray's grin got wider. "Enough to buy a new house in a better neighborhood. Enough to send Emily to any college she wants. Enough to start over completely." Start over. The words had a nice ring to them. "When does he want to meet?" I asked. "How about Monday? I told him you might be available." Available, that was one way to put it. Newly single, newly vindicated, and newly free to build whatever life I wanted. "Tell him I'm interested," I said. Ray clapped me on the shoulder. "Jake, I think this is going to be the beginning of something good for you." As I watched him walk away, I realized he was right. Sarah had tried to destroy my life, but all she'd really done was clear away the dead wood. Now I could build something new, something better, something that belonged entirely to me. I looked down at the Camaro's engine, all clean metal and perfect precision, waiting to be brought back to life, just like me. 3 months later, I was putting the finishing touches on the Shelby Cobra when Jennifer Walsh walked into my new shop. The restoration had taken longer than expected, but the results were spectacular. The car looked like it had just rolled off the assembly line in 1977, all gleaming paint and chrome perfection. "Beautiful work," Jennifer said, running her hand along the car's flank. "Thanks." Ray wasn't kidding about the money being good. This job paid for the new shop and then some. My new shop was everything the old one hadn't been. Spacious, well-lit, and located in the good part of town. I'd even hired an assistant, a kid named Marcus, who reminded me of myself at 25. All enthusiasm and grease-stained ambition. "I have news," Jennifer said, settling into one of the client chairs I'd installed in the office area. "Good news or bad news? Depends on your perspective. Sarah's sentencing hearing was yesterday." I set down my polishing cloth and gave Jennifer my full attention. And 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and full restitution to both of us for legal fees and damages. That's it? That's it. She'll also never practice law again, and her conviction will show up on any background check for the rest of her life. I thought about that for a moment. In some ways, it seemed like a light sentence for someone who'd tried to destroy multiple lives. But then again, Sarah's real punishment wasn't the legal consequences, it was the complete destruction of the life she'd been trying to build. What about Tom? Tom got 5 years in federal prison. Turns out he'd been running similar schemes with other clients for years. The FBI found evidence of at least 6 other cases of fraud and embezzlement. And his business? Liquidated to pay restitution. He'll be bankrupt when he gets out of prison, assuming anyone will hire an ex-con with a fraud conviction. Jennifer stood up and walked over to examine the Cobra's interior. "You know, Jake, I owe you an apology." "For what?" "When this whole thing started, I thought you were just some mechanic who'd gotten in over his head. I underestimated you." So did Sarah, so did Tom, heck, so did I. What do you mean? I gestured around the shop at the expensive equipment and the classic cars and the evidence of a business that was thriving beyond my wildest dreams. I spent 18 years thinking I was just a grease monkey married to a woman who was too good for me. Turns out, I was a businessman, married to a criminal who wasn't nearly as smart as she thought she was. Jennifer laughed. Funny how perspective changes when you start fighting back. Speaking of fighting back, how are you doing? Really? Jennifer's expression grew serious. Better than I expected. The divorce was finalized last month, and I got everything. The house, the business, even Tom's classic car collection. Turns out prenups are worth their weight in gold when your spouse is a convicted felon. And personally, Jennifer smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, it looked genuine. I'm dating again. A nice man who runs a bookstore downtown. He's nothing like Tom. Honest, kind, and completely uninterested in get-rich-quick schemes. Good for you. What about you? Any romantic prospects? I laughed. Jennifer, I'm still figuring out how to be a single father. Romance is pretty far down my priority list right now. Fair enough, but don't wait too long, Jake. You're one of the good ones. After Jennifer left, I stood in my shop and tried to process how much my life had changed in just a few months. The scared, angry man who'd discovered his wife's betrayal was gone, replaced by someone stronger and more confident. Someone who knew exactly what he was worth and wouldn't settle for less. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Dad got accepted to Northwestern. Full scholarship. Northwestern University. My daughter was going to one of the best schools in the country, and she'd earned it entirely on her own merit. No help from her mother's legal connections, no favors from Tom's business network, just pure talent and hard work. I texted back, Congratulations, I'm so proud of you. Emily's response came immediately. Thanks, Dad, for everything. I know this year has been hard, but you handled it perfectly. Mom got exactly what she deserved. My 17-year-old daughter had summed up the entire situation in 6 words. Sarah had wanted a new life, and she'd gotten one. Just not the one she'd planned. Instead of being the wife of a successful businessman, she was a convicted felon working at a call center and living in a studio apartment. Instead of having custody of Emily, she had supervised visitation rights that Emily rarely chose to exercise. Tom had wanted to be free of Jennifer and rich from his schemes, and he'd gotten freedom all right. The freedom of a federal prison cell and a future that included bankruptcy and unemployment. And me? I'd gotten something I hadn't even known I wanted. Self-respect, financial success, and the knowledge that I could handle anything life threw at me. That evening, I was closing up the shop when I found an envelope that had been slipped under the door. My name was written on it, in handwriting I recognized all too well. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a short message. Jake, I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't blame you. I destroyed everything good in my life because I thought I deserved more than what I had. I was wrong about everything, and especially about you. You're a better man than I ever deserved, and Emily is lucky to have you as her father. I'm sorry. Sarah. I read the letter twice, then walked over to the trash can and dropped it in. Some apologies came too late to matter, and some bridges couldn't be rebuilt once they'd been burned. Sarah was right about one thing, though. I would never forgive her. Not because I was bitter or angry, but because forgiveness implied that what she'd done was forgivable. Trying to destroy someone's life, steal their child, and frame them for crimes they didn't commit wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was a choice, a series of calculated decisions that revealed exactly who Sarah really was. I turned off the lights in my shop and headed home to the house I'd bought with the money from the Cobra restoration. It was smaller than the old house, but nicer, in a better neighborhood, with a workshop in the garage, and enough space for Emily to have friends over when she came home from college. As I drove through the quiet streets of my town, I thought about the conversation I'd had with Ray the day before. He'd offered me a partnership in his gym, said he was getting too old to run the business side and needed someone he could trust. Think about it, he'd said. You've got the business sense, I've got the boxing knowledge. Together we could build something really special. A boxing gym and a classic car restoration business. It wasn't the life I'd planned when I married Sarah 18 years ago, but it was a good life, an honest life, a life built on my own terms. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at my house with its warm lights and neat lawn. This was what winning looked like. Not revenge or destruction, but the simple satisfaction of building something better from the ruins of what came before. Sarah had said it was impossible to cancel. She'd been wrong about that, just like she'd been wrong about everything else. Some things weren't just possible to cancel, they were necessary to cancel, so you could start over and build something worth keeping. I got out of the car and walked toward my front door, leaving the past behind me where it belonged.